Hello, hello. Welcome to BSB Must Reads, where we are going to show you all the books that should be on your bookshelf. As you now may know, this is Bold Strokes' new marketing platform where we have one author, one book, one reading, and one interview of all our new releases. And I have Brey Willows with me today, who is covering her cover for her new books, which just side a little bit. Oh, there you go. Her book, Vision of Virtue. Hi, Brey.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great. I'm doing great. So this is book 2 in Memories Muses. All right. So why don't you tell us like a little bit about like what is this series?
Okay, so each book in this series focuses on one of the 9 muses. The muses, of course, were all about inspiration and inspiring us to create and discover. And I've always been fascinated with this group of sisters who were all about human development in the arts and the sciences. I think that's amazing. So I decided to go in and tell their story. The reason it's called Memories Muses is because memory or memazine is their mom. So Memories Muses.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So for readers who may not have read your books and may not know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, and then tell us about your new book, which is, as mentioned, is the second in this series, and we would love to hear you read from it.
Fantastic. All right. So I am a fantasy, sci-fi, spec fic writer. I love creating worlds and playing with worlds. I write a lot of urban fantasy, so you're going to get a taste of kind of what magic would be in the world we live in today. Mythology is the heart of me. I love Greek myth and all kind of religious myth. I think it's amazing. So with that, I will dive in and introduce you to Cleo Ardalides, and she is the muse of history and virtue. And those are difficult things in this time. So here is your introduction to Cleo. How many demigod babies are out there now? No one knows, and the gods won't say. Cleo Ardalides pushed the newspaper from the makeup table into the trash. Another passive-aggressive act by her stylist to remind her that the world still had difficulties, even though the immortals had merged with the world. As though she needed to be reminded, as though a muse was unaware of suffering. It was her job to know humans. But her show wasn't about suffering and sadness and all that stuff. Celine's show was where the gods went to talk politics and answer serious and never-ending questions surrounding existential angst. Cleo's show was about fun, about the light side of life. Why couldn't some people understand that? She sighed and brushed at the strands of light, dyed hair around her face. Sure, she stayed away from humans for the most part these days. Her role didn't allow for that kind of thing now. But that didn't mean she didn't know things. She just chose what to focus on. Nothing wrong with that. The door opened. 5 minutes, Cleo. The gopher shut the door before she could acknowledge him. She refreshed her lip gloss and smiled widely at the mirror. She'd already said hello to tonight's guests, and now all she had to do was shine, as always. She left her dressing room and let the light, bright purple chiffon dress flow around her, giving the impression she was gliding. She knew it did, because she'd practiced extensively to get the effect just right. What was the point in being immortal in front of the camera if she didn't play the part? The music came on and she closed her eyes. Deep breaths. 1, 2, 3. She stepped on stage to loud applause, both from the audience and supplemented by the sound crew. She waved and twirled and batted her false lashes, which felt heavy with glue tonight. She sat primly in her high-backed chair and leaned toward the audience. Don't you all look gorgeous? She scanned the crowd, looking for a kind face to focus on. It helped the ever-present nerves, even after all this time. But tonight, not one gave the impression, the feeling she needed. Unsettled, she sat back and focused on the camera and said, I've got two super special, spectacular guests tonight. She looked into camera 2 to get her good side. Adorable cherub of cheer, kid of kindness, Cupid is here to spread some love. The cheers were somewhat lackluster, and she worked to smile bigger, her cheeks already growing sore. And his lovely competition, the stunning and strong, the willful and wily, Scotty. The gorgeous Norse goddess strode onto the stage, her short white tunic showing off her long, strong legs. Cupid, red-faced and leering, rode on her shoulder, his bow and arrow cocked at the audience. The audience would have no idea that he was red-faced because he'd been drinking some foul-smelling bourbon since he'd arrived, and was half out of his head drunk. And a drunk Cupid had done plenty of damage in the past. Cleo stood and held her hands out to Scotty, who took them and rolled her eyes slightly, her back turned to the camera. Get this little shit off my shoulder before he pisses himself and ruins my dress, she hissed, still smiling, though her eyes were narrowed. Cleo reached up and plucked Cupid from Scotty's shoulder, holding him away from her in case Scotty was right about his need to relieve himself. Isn't Cupid just the cutest thing? The audience tittered and gasped as Cupid let loose a haphazard arrow that fortunately didn't hit anyone. It stuck in the carpet, and a crew member quickly swept down and grabbed it before an audience member could. Gods only knew what a human would do with an arrow of love, or loathing, whichever he'd loaded up this time. She set him on the floor and tried not to kick him away when he leaned against her leg and caressed her calf. Tonight, we're going to watch these two run the gamut, and of course, it will end with an archery contest. The crowd's approval was louder this time. The giant screen behind her showed the obstacle course. First, they have to make it through the Bouncy Castle Highway. Then they have to swim across the Lake of Pudding. Once they're back on shore, they have to climb the top of Mount Everest, Olympus, where they'll be ready to shoot at moving targets. Scotty began to stretch like she was going into an actual obstacle course and not something designed just for some lighthearted connection with the gods. Cupid swayed and sat on his fat little behind, drawing a soft awe from the audience. Cleo nudged him with her purple stiletto. And as you all know, the one rule of this obstacle course is that no god can use their powers. They have to do it the mortal way or no way. The audience chanted that phrase with her, and there was no question that beneath it simmered some resentment. She steeled herself and ignored the pain in her cheeks. So, let's see our contenders get dirty.
Oh my God. I love it. There's a lake of pudding.
Trust you to focus on the lake of pudding.
There's a drunk and rowdy Cupid, and there's a lake of pudding. I'm sold.
You have to do it, right? I mean, you'd watch that, wouldn't you?
I would. It sounds good. Yeah.
She
Okay.
gets on the bouncy castle and then shows that she's not wearing underwear too. So, you know, I feel like that would probably be up your alley too.
Oh my goodness. I think Brey Willows just made me blush, you guys. All right. So this is sort of set in the world of the gods, as you mentioned in your intro. Is it set on Earth? Is it like gods on Earth?
It is, yeah. So in the Afterlife Inc. trilogy, which I started with some years ago, we talk about the way the gods have suddenly merged with the world. They've kind of come out of hiding and they're living among us. So in this series, that's kind of a continuation of it. We are living with the gods who you might see sitting at a coffee shop down the street, answering prayer by email, or, you know, having a rally outside City Hall.
Cool. All right. So in what ways is this book fantastical and reality? I mean, there's a lake of pudding, which you generally wouldn't see, right? in
Mm.
reality. So how do you decide like what elements are going to be kind of the fantasy ma magical realism elements, and then what ones you keep kind of true to the real world?
Oh, that's a tough question. So I think I start with our real world as my base and what I might see if I looked out the window, right? And then I go from there. Who would help that? Who could change things? We live in this world of constant movement, and nothing is ever the same from day to day. So I think using the real world as a base and then adding magic to it is a way to make it really relatable and to show us that if we just maybe look a little deeper, or pay attention just a little bit longer, maybe we'll see something really special.
Mhm.
But then I also like to play with reality, and the very real issues we're dealing with. I try to do it in kind of a lighthearted way using the gods and such. But for instance, in Vision of Virtue, we're dealing with a drug cartel, and the fallout from a drug cartel. But we have Danny, who is the goddess of death, there dealing with it, and we actually have something happen in Russia, which this book was in production before what happened with Russia and the Ukraine. But there it is. It's on the page and dealing with real life issues, but hopefully in a way that makes them accessible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think your books also deal with a lot of social commentary too, right? Like Song of Serenity, there was a lot in there about kind of arbitration and how you know, work with people who don't agree with you or with each other, and the pitfalls of that. And this one, there's a lot about being an influencer and fame and how those are pitfalls. Do you think, is there something about the fantasy components of this book set in the real world that gives you the freedom that you wouldn't have if it was like a contemporary story to explore those things?
Oh yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I think that's been the purview of fantasy and science fiction since its birth. You know, so many decades ago. It is the nature of commentary, and making it accessible to people,
Yeah.
and being able to take these real world issues and put them in a context that you can understand and that makes it personal,
Mhm.
like the influencer, like arbitration, and trying to understand how to debate with people that you disagree with.
Mhm.
In Lines of Love, which is out in December, you know, the Muse of Love gets sued because people don't have the relationships that they're looking for. Love is hard to find, and so people sue her because she's not doing her job right. And again, like you say, it's a social commentary kind of, because relationships are hard, and
Mhm.
in a society where we're supposed to be really connected by technology and dating apps and all this stuff, we're more lonely than we've ever been.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to touch on these issues, but also do it in a fun, lighthearted way. So if you want to interact with these issues, you can. But if not, you can just read the book and enjoy it,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, so for you as the author, where do you fall in this kind of social media influencer space? Are you pro social media? Do you consider yourself you know, part of that space as a writer promoting your books? Or do you see that the kind of the problems and the darker side of that? Just to give readers a little bit of insight into you as a person, how do you use these platforms?
Insight into me might be a little bit frightening, but um, um, I don't think it's a black and white situation. I think it's I think there's a lot of gray in there. Um, I think we have amazing outreach, and I think we have amazing abilities to connect with people all over the world. And that is phenomenal. But I think that there's a lack of human contact now, of being out in the world. You can hole up in your house and not talk to anybody real face to face. And I think humans are very social creatures. We, as animals, we need our tribes, and that distancing of a screen, I think, creates a lack of tribe. But I think it also gives you places to find one, you know, where you can, and I think it morphs and it changes. These groups, particularly here in England and Nottingham, I see groups getting together, LGBTQ groups that are doing history tours through the city. And I think, what a great idea. And then they're going for coffee instead of kind of going drinking or dancing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it provides a place that is amazing. And like I'm on TikTok and I post videos about writing and writing tips, and I see other people's videos saying, you're not alone, you are love, you are going to be okay. And I think that's a message that people need to hear, especially if they're not hearing it around them in person. So I think it's got a really amazing kind of gray area space. And I'm interested in seeing how it changes as we move forward.
All right. I see it popping up in another book.
Yeah, now it will. Yeah.
Okay, so this is book 2. And you're currently in edits on Lines of Love, is that right?
Yes. It comes out in December, and it's
what can you tell us about it?
Ooh, so
give the whole thing.
Eris, get the whole thing, just spill it. So we meet Eris in Vision of Virtue. She is Cleo's sounding board, even though maybe she's not terribly reliable as a sounding board. She's retired. She's given up on love. She thinks because of social media and because of technology getting in the way of reality, she doesn't think real love exists anymore. People don't know what it is. So she's retired and she's given it up to run a very sexy kind of all-out club in LA. And when she is being sued, she meets attorney Grace Gordon, who is a romantic at heart and just really wants to believe in love and that one special person. But when she has to defend Eris in court, they obviously have to put their passion on the back burner.
For sure. Oh, that's so exciting. I can't believe she gets sued. That is so great.
And I suppose in a way, I'm touching on that distancing in Vision of Virtue as well, because like you say, Cleo is an influencer and a celebrity and has all this kind of fakeness, and she's lost herself. Whereas Kit Calloway, her love interest in this, is a news reporter. She's a journalist. She takes things way too seriously, and wants to point out all the bad stuff going on and that things aren't right in the world. Whereas the influencer is kind of just all about the fun and fluff. So when they're forced to work together, obviously they butt heads quite badly.
Well, I mean, that's just a great example of what you were saying about how there's nuance, right? Neither one of them is wrong, but neither one of them is fully right either. And it's about finding that nuance together, and of course, falling in love at the end of the day, we hope. Of course. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Brey Willows. You can find Vision of Virtue available now at the Bold Strokes Books web store and out September 13th everywhere books are sold. Thanks. Yay! Please read it.